Okay, so you want to buy a football club, not a share, not a hospitality box. The whole thing. The crest, the stadium, the players, and the 70-year-old man in row F who has held the same season ticket since before you were born and will hate every decision you ever make. You want your name on the wall. You want to stand at the ground you now own and hear 40,000 people sing. Here is the first thing nobody tells you. A football club is not a business that occasionally loses money. It is a machine for turning a large fortune into a smaller one, and it runs beautifully. You are not buying an asset. You are buying the right to fund other people's wages, forever, in front of an audience that will boo you the moment you try to stop. It is the only trophy in the world that sends you an invoice. So let me show you exactly where the money goes, who really controls you once you sign, and why the day you finally win something is often the day you begin to go broke. Let me start with the good news, which is that you can genuinely afford one. Not the club you are picturing, but a club. Down at the bottom of the English pyramid, football clubs change hands for less than the price of a decent house in the same town. An average League Two side, the fourth tier of English football, can sell for under £10 million. Move up one rung to League One, and a solid club might run you around $20 million. And if it sits in a big city, owns its own stadium, and has a real fan base, closer to the top of that range. Some go for almost nothing. Accrington Stanley, a professional English club with more than a century of history, was valued at roughly £2.25 million in 2019. That is a rounding error to a hedge fund and a lifelong dream to everyone else. Then the ladder gets steep, fast. The moment you climb into the Premier League, the numbers stop behaving like sport and start behaving like real estate in a currency you have never heard of. Roman Abramovich bought Chelsea in 2003 for about £140 million. When he was forced to sell 19 years later, the consortium led by Todd Boehly paid $2.5 billion for the shares, with a pledge to pour another £1.75 billion into the club over the following decade. £4.25 billion, all in. And here is the detail that should make you nervous rather than excited. In 19 years of owning that club and winning almost everything there is to win, Abramovich is estimated to have put in well over £1 billion of his own money and taken essentially none of it back out. That is not a bad investor. That is what owning a football club at the top level actually costs. So the entry price is whatever you want it to be. That was never the trap. The trap is what happens on the second of the month, every month, for the rest of your ownership. Now, who lets you in? Because you do not simply wire the money and collect the keys. Above you sits a wall of gatekeepers, and unlike most industries, they do not work for you. First, there is the league itself, the Premier League or the English Football League, which runs what it calls an owners and directors test, a fit and proper person check designed to keep out the disqualified, the bankrupt, and the openly criminal. It is famously easy to pass and famously embarrassing when it fails, but it is a door, and someone else holds the handle. Then there are the financial rules, profit and sustainability regulations, cost control ratios, the whole apparatus built specifically because owners like the one you are about to become kept setting fire to their own clubs. These rules can dock you points, block your transfers, and turn a good season into a relegation on a spreadsheet. Then there is the pyramid itself, the thing that makes English football magnificent and makes owning it terrifying: promotion and relegation. There is no franchise, no protected league seat, no guarantee you stay where you bought in. You can spend £100 million and be relegated into a division where the television money is a tenth of what it was. And standing behind all of them, patient and unsmiling, is the tax office. Because in football, His Majesty's Revenue and Customs has ended more clubs than any striker ever has. Hold that thought. We will come back to the taxman because he is the one who actually kills you. Right. Let us talk about the money machine, because there genuinely is one, and it is enormous. A modern football club has 3 taps. The first is matchday, tickets, hospitality, the pie, and the pint. The second is commercial, shirt sponsors, kit deals, the badge on the sleeve, the naming rights. But the third tap is the one that turned football from a sport into an asset class, and that tap is television. The Premier League sells the right to broadcast its games as a single collective bundle, and the numbers are surreal. For the 2025/26 season, the combined value of the domestic and international broadcast deals is around £3.5 to £3.8 billion for one season. Across the full cycle from 2025 to 2029, the rights are worth somewhere north of £13 billion. That money is pooled and shared among 20 clubs, which means that simply by being in the Premier League, not winning it, not qualifying for anything, just existing in it, you are handed a broadcast check that dwarfs the entire annual budget of most businesses in the country. This is the fantasy that gets people to sign. You look at that river of television money and you think, how could anyone possibly lose money running one of these? The revenue arrives like weather. It falls on you whether you deserve it or not. And that is exactly the misunderstanding that bankrupts owners. Because the broadcast money is not your money. It is money passing through you on its way to the players. Here is the mechanism, and it is the whole game. In football, revenue is rented and wages are permanent. When a new television deal makes every club richer at the same moment, they do not bank the difference. They spend it on each other's players, bidding against one another for the same 40 good footballers on earth, until the entire windfall has been converted into higher salaries. Look at the actual figures. In the 2024/25 season, total staff costs across the Premier League reached about £6.5 billion, equal to roughly 94% of the league's entire revenue. 94 pence of every pound coming in went straight back out as wages, before a single stadium light was switched on. 14 of the 20 clubs spent more on staff than they earned in total revenue. One club's wage bill ran to around 146% of its income. Chelsea alone reported staff costs of roughly £585 million in a single year. That is your business. That is what you bought. A club is a hole in the bottom of a very expensive boat, and the television money is the man bailing it out with a bucket that is almost, but never quite, big enough. And consider the timing of all this. As I record this, Spain have just beaten France to reach the World Cup final. With Argentina and England still to settle. On the pitch, which of them joins them? The whole planet is watching. Flags out, national anthems, glory. But here is the quiet joke underneath the spectacle. Not one of those players is paid by his country. A nation borrows these footballers for a few weeks every 4 years and hands them a medal. The wages that make them the best on earth, the wages that bankrupt the men who own them, are paid by clubs every single day of the year. Medal or no medal, the World Cup is the party. You, the club owner, are the one who gets the bar bill in the morning. Now let me hand you the cold side of this. The part the highlight reels never show. Because this is where owners actually die. The wage bill is a ratchet. It only ever turns one way. When you are chasing success, you sign a striker on a 5-year contract at enormous money, and that contract does not care how you finish. If you get relegated, his wages do not fall through the relegation trapdoor with you. Your income can collapse by 80% in 90 minutes on the final day of the season, and your costs stay exactly where they were, signed, sealed, and legally binding. This is the single most dangerous feature of the entire industry. And it is why football is the only business on earth where winning can bankrupt you faster than losing. Success raises the wages. The wages never come back down. And then one bad season removes the revenue that was paying for them. Add to that the things you did not price in. The transfer fees, tens of millions per player, that you write off before he has kicked a ball. The stadium that needs a new roof or a new stand, or replacing entirely. The academy, the women's team, the medical staff, the analysts, the loan army, the agents, always the agents, who take their cut of every deal in both directions. And the fans, who are the most loyal customers in all of commerce, and therefore the most merciless. They will never leave you. They will also never, for 1 second, stop telling you that you are ruining the thing they love. You have bought a customer base that cannot be lost and cannot be satisfied. So let me introduce you to the people who live this. Meet Peter Ridsdale, In the early 2000s, he was the chairman of Leeds United, and for one intoxicating season, he had the best job in England. His Leeds side reached the semi-final of the Champions League in 2001, young and fearless, and one step from the summit of Europe. And Ridsdale did what the fantasy tells every owner to do. He bet the club on staying there. He borrowed against the future. Leeds took out a securitization loan, around £60 million, repayable over 25 years, secured on the assumption that the Champions League money, the rising gates, the packed stadium would simply keep coming. They spent as though qualification was a law of nature rather than a knockout competition. It was not a law of nature. Leeds finished 5th, then missed out again. And the golden goose, the Champions League revenue the entire plan was built on, simply did not arrive. And the debt did not care. The debt never cares. By the time Ridsdale stepped down in 2003, the club was around £103 million in the red. Leeds sold their best players, then more players, then were relegated in 2004, and fell out of the top division of English football for the better part of 2 decades. Ridsdale's own words became the epitaph for the whole era. "We lived the dream." He was right. That is exactly what it was. A dream is a thing you enjoy intensely, and then have to wake up from, usually owing someone money. If Leeds is what overreach looks like, Portsmouth is what the bill looks like when it finally lands. In February 2010, Portsmouth became the first Premier League club ever to go into administration, insolvent, unable to pay its players' wages, drowning in debts of around £78 million. The league docked them 9 points as punishment, which in football is the equivalent of fining a drowning man for making a splash. They were relegated, and they fell, and they kept falling. And then there is the taxman I told you to remember. In 2012, Rangers, one of the largest and most successful clubs in Britain, with more league titles than almost anyone, went into administration owing enormous sums, much of it to the tax authorities, who refused to let the club quietly settle and walk away. The old company was liquidated that October. Total liabilities were reported as potentially exceeding £134 million. A club that had existed since the 19th century, that had won more than 50 league championships, was legally dissolved and had to climb back up from the bottom division of Scottish football. 50-plus titles could not save it. A tax bill could end it, because a trophy cabinet is not an argument a court will hear. And if you think that is only the fate of the giants, meet Barry. Founded in 1885, a member of the English Football League for 125 years, with 2 FA Cups in the trophy room. In August 2019, a rescue deal collapsed roughly 90 minutes before the deadline, and the league expelled them. The first club thrown out of the Football League in 27 years. 125 years of history, gone in an afternoon, because the money did not arrive on time. In football, heritage is priceless and worthless at the exact same instant. Now let me show you one more owner, because it explains why so many of them do it anyway. In 2005, the Glazer family bought Manchester United, then the biggest club on the planet, for about £790 million. But watch how they paid. It was a leveraged buyout. They borrowed most of the money, roughly $540 million of it from a handful of New York hedge funds. And then, in the move that defines modern football ownership, they secured that debt against the club itself. United had been debt-free since 1931. Overnight, it was carrying hundreds of millions in loans, paying interest of over £60 million a year, on a debt the owners had taken on in order to buy it. The club paid for its own purchase. That is not a bug in football ownership. For a certain kind of owner, that is the entire point. You do not put your fortune into the club. You make the club fund your ownership of it, and you let the fans absorb the interest. Now let us actually calculate what you make, because the fantasy deserves a number. Say you buy a well-run League One club for £20 million. You are ambitious, so you spend to chase promotion. You push your wage bill up toward the money the championship above you pays. Because everyone around you is doing exactly the same, and you cannot compete otherwise. Your revenue might be 10, maybe 15 million a year, and your wages are eating 90, 100, 110% of it before you have paid for the coach, the stadium, the medical bills, or the agents. So you are losing money every single season by design. You are not running a business. You are funding a gamble on promotion. And every rival owner is funding the same gamble, which means most of you must, mathematically, lose. Now win the gamble. You get promoted. Congratulations. And now the wages have to rise again, because championship players cost more than League One players, and the trapdoor to relegation is right there beneath the pitch. If you go up to the Premier League and stay, the television river makes the numbers work for a while, and your club's paper value soars. And one day, maybe, you sell to the next dreamer for more than you paid. That is the prize. That is the exit that keeps the whole casino running. But if you get relegated, and half of everyone who ever reaches the top gets relegated eventually, your income drops off a cliff, while those long contracts stay exactly where they were. That is the Leeds equation. That is the Portsmouth equation. Your net worth is standing on a trapdoor, and the lever is being pulled by 22 men you are paying a fortune to and cannot control. So here is the real economics of owning a football club. It is the most emotionally valuable and financially punishing asset a rich person can buy. The revenue is spectacular, and it is not yours. The wages are permanent, and they are entirely yours. The gatekeepers do not answer to you. The fans will never leave and never forgive you. And the one competition you cannot buy your way out of, relegation, can erase most of your income in a single afternoon while the bills keep arriving on time. You thought you were buying a football club. You were buying the right to pay for its problems in public with your name on the wall, while 40,000 people watch you do it and sing that you don't know what you're doing. And the worst part, the part that keeps the phone ringing with the next billionaire, they are usually right.